welcome back to the Walleye Files, you guys. Brandon Ruffolo here, and we've got a really exciting episode. My good friend Mitch Daun and I won the Duck Creek Walleye Series championship on the Bay of Green Bay last weekend. We are here to break down just about everything we did. We're going to give you as much info as we can. I think we filmed for about 20 minutes here, just kind of talking, giving a nice little recap on how we won. And if you have questions, guys, if you have questions on how or what baits or whatever, how we do something, make sure you send a message to us or ask us in the comments. I'm happy to film another little 30-second reel or 2-minute reel on how we did it or how I presented a bait in a certain way. Man, October is flying by already. It's the 16th when we filmed this. We're halfway through October. We're getting to the November rut for me. The Walleye Slam and the Fall Brawl on Lake Erie starts here in a couple days. I'm going to be there for a few days here early November with my good friend Dan Harper. We're going to be filming some content, catching some walleyes, hopefully winning it big if we do. Want one that's about 13 and a half pounds. It'd be pretty crazy if it happened, but talk it into existence. And, we're almost to winter. We're almost to ice fishing season already. We got a little bit of boat fishing left between Erie, Badenoch, Green Bay, other places. But we are getting closer. We've got some great guests coming up here over the next couple weeks. Can't tell you who yet, but we've got some great guests. I've got some guys filming here next week. Some great anglers on the National Walleye Tour. So I'm super excited about that. So stay tuned. If you like this, you're going to love that. Thanks again to our amazing sponsors. We can't do this without you guys. Image 360 and Crown Trophy, Walleye Nation Creations, Lake Effect Lures, Bellevue Spice Company, Thunderhook Fly-Ins, and Striker Brands. Guys, check out our sponsors. We can't do a podcast without them. I spend a lot of time saying that on the podcast because I can't. I cannot do this without them. I can't do it without you guys. I can't do this without you guys. With you guys, the viewers are amazing. I've had a lot of great feedback so far. We are 45,000 views away from 1 million views so far this year. It's really special. When we get there, might do a little giveaway. I'll let you know. But I'm rambling, and just want to say thanks again, guys. Mitch Daun, Brandon Ruffolo of Duck Creek Walleye Series champions. Feels pretty good to be a champion. This episode of the Walleye Files is presented by Image 360 Inc. and Crown Trophy of Oshkosh, Wisconsin. For over 30 years, Image 360 and Crown Trophy have been Oshkosh's go-to for signs, vehicle graphics, custom apparel, and awards. Proudly serving northeastern Wisconsin with quality that speaks volumes. Your brand deserves to stand out. Let's make it unforgettable. Need signs that pop, graphics that roar, and branded apparel that turns heads? Image 360 and Crown Trophy in Oshkosh have been rocking northeastern Wisconsin for 30 years. From bold branding to epic awards, we bring your vision to life. Let's go. Love Image 360 and Crown Trophy. Duck Creek Walleye Series champions, Mitch. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. How you doing?
Good, dude. We got one of these next to us, and you got yours just in the background? Life's
yeah,
good.
I put up a little floating shelf for that one. It's nice. Looks good.
Dude. So let's get into last weekend because, we kind of had a tough season. Like, we did not fish great. The last event for Duck Creek, the last regular season event, we took 15th, and that kind of jumped us enough in the standings to get us in the championship. But honestly, the first two events, we just did not jive well together, and I think we were worried about stepping on each other's toes. And that last event, we kind of looked at each other and said, if there's something you want to say or do, just say it. And I think that helped translate into a really good finish in this obviously winning this last event, this championship.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. Like, we talked about it too. I think both of us have had individual success. We've been doing halfway decent. You probably better than I, but we've done halfway decent on our own. And I just think we were probably too timid in the boat. Like, we'd come up with a game plan, we'd stick to it, we wouldn't adjust, and didn't communicate well together. So you look at that last event, we were on fish pretty much the entire day. We caught a ton of walleye, decent weight. Thought it was going to be a little bit better than 15th place. Thought maybe we cracked top 10, but thankfully it was at least 15th place because I think we just snuck in the championship. I don't remember if it was 38th or 39th place that they
Yeah,
when they take the
30,
top 40.
39th place. We made
Yeah,
the championship by 2 points. Which is cool. Which is cool. I mean, it's one of those things where that was kind of the goal to make the championship. Obviously, for us, we had a little loftier goal than that. But when we
yeah.
got in the championship, all eyes were set on winning this thing. You know, I didn't get that much pre-fish. I was gone until the week leading up to the tournament. Your boat was out of commission for a little bit, just doing some warranty work. So we did not
Mhm.
have a lot of time on the water the whole month of September going into October. And we had a lot of really good conversations, leading up to our pre-fish, and it was pretty limited. You fished Thursday, I fished a few hours on Friday. Friday's weather was absolutely wicked. And then
Mhm.
we set out Saturday on our one spot kind of a game plan, and swung for the fence, and luckily we hit the ball over.
Right. I mean, we did have a plan B and C, but thankfully we didn't need it because it definitely wasn't as good as plan A. But yeah, you were spot on. I mean, the limited amount of pre-fish we have, it's fall, it's hunting season. I unfortunately scheduled a work meeting for like the entire day Friday. I planned to take off. So thankfully I got to take off Thursday because the weather was much better. Um, got out in the water and I had like 18% left of my battery. So I was pretty limited on Thursday too. So it was very minimal pre-fishing, I think, for both of us, which worked out well. I mean, we found a decent pot of fish on Thursday, and it's kind of a smaller area that held a little bit warmer water that kept the active fish, and we landed on them pretty much immediately Saturday, which helped a ton.
Yeah, and we had talked about this. We've talked about this for a month that we don't have a lot of prior knowledge fishing in October on the Bay of Green Bay. I don't think I've ever done it, maybe
Yeah.
once. Um, but I fished a tournament late September a handful of years ago, did well, and not far from the area we were in. And we just kind of said, okay, we expect the East Shore to be the right area. And then we watched the weather, the wind kind of played into that factor. It kept that East Shore. It wasn't as warm as the West Shore, but we had that prevailing current. And the residual current from the day before was still pushing, north to south. We had some north wind to start the morning. It kind of calmed down for a little bit, and it got really ugly for a little while too. But honestly, just the name of the game for this tournament, and the reason we won this tournament is the little adjustments. We've talked about it before. I've talked about it in this podcast a lot. The difference between winning and losing, or winning and just being successful, sometimes is small adjustments or small details. And thankfully, we kind of paid attention to all the little things: wind direction, water temperature, water color, what the fish were doing as far as what we were seeing on a live scope. And that all played a hand in us winning. This episode of the Walleye Files is brought to you by Lake Effect Lures, the tackle that turns every cast into a catch. Built for serious anglers, tested on real fish, and proven to get bites when nothing else will. Get yours at lakeeffectlures.com.
Yeah, I definitely did. And like told you Saturday, I think we talked about it a lot on Saturday. I still thought we were one bite short of a win. Um, what's unique this year is it's just been so warm. I think we had a couple of weeks of 80-degree weather in September. So it's still a transition between like that late summer pattern and fall. And it was just amazing to see how much bait was in the area we were in yet. I mean, there was just a ton of bait holding them. It wasn't the warmest water in the system, but it was the warmest water in that area holding that bait and just keeping those fish in that area that were active. So it was, yeah, like I said, we got super fortunate to land on it right away Saturday. And then the micro adjustments throughout the day. I think you had two missed fish almost immediately on our first drift, and you made a small adjustment. We really had to slow down the presentation. We had fish chasing, and they just weren't committing to it. So slowing down the presentation. I think at times you and I both just had the rod tip out there, holding it, letting it drifting with the boat, and it would take sometimes 8-10 seconds before that fish would actually latch on. But it was key. I think we came out with 8 bites, 8 fish. Well, more than 8 bites, but eight
Yeah.
fish.
Yeah, I think we had 10 fish or 8 fish. I think we had about 12 bites. And I would say at least 4 of those 8 fish came within 5 feet of the trolling motor. At least
Easily.
5 feet from the boat, out from the boat. There were several fish on a death jig that I held the bait in their nose, allowed the current to push the boat backwards. You know, we're facing the boat into the wind. And the hardest part was the current was pushing, north to south. We were facing north. It wasn't super conducive to being really, really effective, but we made it work. Held a bait in a fish's nose as long as physically possible, sometimes feathering that trolling motor to hold it there longer, not allowing the bait to lower in the water column or go higher in the water column. And those fish would just kind of come up and latch on and hold on. The first 2 bites I had to start the morning, I watched the line tighten up. I never felt anything, never felt weight. I just watched the line go from a limp to just flexed out a little bit, and I missed both bites. Thankfully, like I said, we made a little adjustment on how to present the bait to a fish. Popped off. I think I popped off the first 4. You made a little adjustment on how you want to hold a jig. You are Mr. Jig and Crawler, and I am not. I'm not.
Stubborn.
And I think that also played into our success because we were throwing 2 different presentations. I think you had a fish that bit your jig and crawler and missed, and I put it back on it and I caught it. And, it helps that we've got some great teamwork and we fish together enough now where you missed that fish and I'm on the bow mount pedal as soon as you get off it to go get another crawler, and I hooked up with a fish right away. And, if anybody's going to take anything away from that, whoever you're fishing with, if you're fishing with a partner at a tournament, understand your partner, understand, your weaknesses and your strengths for each of you, and then have the communication to understand, okay, I'm getting off this foot pedal. It's your turn to get on this foot pedal. There was never a point where you or I were not on the foot pedal during the day, other than when we were catching a fish and taking a picture of a fish.
Yeah. And we were both out of the bow. And I think you look at the first 2 events and we'd both be out of the bow and kind of filter back and forth. And we switched boats pretty much every other event throughout the season. So I think at certain times early in the season, we were just, again, afraid to step on toes. In this event, we were just jumping on. And even the last event of the Duck Creek, like we were both jumping in. If I lost a crawler, I'd go get a crawler and you jump on the foot pedal, vice versa. It worked out really well. And then going along with the fish that you caught after I missed that one, same thing happened with that big bite with 15 minutes left. I thought it was going to haunt us. I think you missed him with the death jig. I cast it back out there. I kind of called the shot, hovered it right in front of him. He bit and just bit the tail of the crawler off. But it was the same scenario. Like you can at times get multiple attempts at the same fish if you're effective.
Yeah, I agree. And as a tournament fisherman, when you're having a good day, and we thought, hey, we got this 38 to 40 pound range. We're 1 bite away, and you kind of know as an angler where you're standing in your head mentally, like where you think you are, how many bites away you are. And we kept saying it, like, okay, we're 2 bites out. We're 2 bites out. And then I upgraded a quarter inch on a fish. Okay, still probably 2 bites out. You caught a 27 and a half, I think. And then it was like, okay, we've got 3 fish over 27. We got 2 over 25 and a half. At this point, we're like, we need that 28 to 29 inch bite. Thankfully we didn't need it. Yeah, well, we both missed it. Thankfully we didn't need it. It all worked out. We actually, guys, the way they run the weigh-in or the awards for this tournament, they don't show the standings until about 6 o'clock at night. They don't present the awards until 7 o'clock. We live an hour away. Mitch and I looked at each other and went, well, we probably took a top 5. We're happy with where we're at, but we probably didn't win. We jumped in the truck and drove home and sat down to dinner with Mitch and his wife and kids. We were sitting there at a bar, just ordered our food, just had a beer, and we decided to send a courtesy text to Andy, the tournament director, and he texted us back, said, by the way, you guys won. And the fire drill kind of ensued. We threw everybody in the vehicle and drove up to Hobart, Wisconsin, up near Green Bay, and got our plaques and took some pictures. So it was pretty special. It was kind of a fire drill, kind of a shit show, to lack of a better term, but pretty awesome. A way to end the day.
Yeah, you got to babysit my kids on the way up. I think they
Yeah,
had deep fried shrimp, just eating them in the back seat while we were on our way up to Hobart. But it was pretty cool. I mean, it was worth the drive. We realistically didn't want to make the additional drive. It's a long day, honestly. Like even for these club events, I think our rules meeting was at 5 a.m. You fish from 7 to 3, and then award ceremony being at 7, which it's a championship. They had a lot of things to go through, a lot of really cool things that they did. We just had some family time that we wanted to get in there, so we headed back home, but took the family back up anyway once we found out we won.
yeah, your family was, came up with us. My wife met us there, and my mother-in-law. So that was really special to see them and have them there and take some pictures. And um, yeah, it was pretty cool. Back to on the water. Now, we've done this a couple times this year where we've read. I feel like we've done the best events we've had is the ones where we have read the current the best.
Mhm.
Um, This episode of the Walleye Files is brought to you by Thunderhook Fly-Ins, the premium fly-in fishing destination in Ontario, Canada. Trophy walleyes, giant pike, and remote wilderness adventures await. Book your trip now at thunderhook.com. What was the current like on Thursday when you were pre-fishing? Because I have to imagine it was different than the residual current we had on Saturday morning.
Yeah, it was similar. It wasn't as strong. So if I look to Saturday, like a lot of times we were just hovering that jig and it would stay off bottom, and these fish were suspended 5 to 10 feet up, especially if you pull them up and they kind of engage in your bait. So as they were suspended, I was using quarter ounce jig and it was pretty much floating even in the water column. Where on Thursday, I think I told you this too. A lot of times I had to drop it down, and that's kind of a strategy I use a lot with the jig and crawler. If I get them too close to the boat, it's clear water. There was barely any wave on Thursday. If I get them within 20, 30 feet, I'll drop it down so that they're fixated down on the bait instead of looking up. And it just wasn't a situation that you could really effectively do that and have that jig and crawler move naturally on Saturday. So to your point, like it was a different current, different adjustment. I think I dropped a few down to the bottom, but it wasn't dragging natural. You weren't able to use that cadence naturally. So it was kind of flowing right in that current for us on Saturday.
Yeah, we definitely needed to gauge which way the fish were feeding. They happen to be
Mhm.
feeding up instead of down. A lot of times you'll be live scoping, um, and you'll drop a bait on a fish's nose and you'll drop it right past them, especially when you're using a hyper rattle. I've tried to throw a jig and wrap on Saturday a lot. Um, and the only time I ever got reactions is when I was hovering it above their head. I never got them to nose down on a jig and wrap. And what that told us, especially early on in the day, was hey, these fish are feeding up, keep the bait horizontal or just above the fish's nose, allow them to make the decision to come up and eat instead of trying to force feed them to follow it down to the bottom and pick it up off the bottom.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And as I look back at Saturday too, I mean, Saturday's fish were much higher in the water column than they were on Thursday. Like Thursday, they were kind of in the bottom, 6, 7 feet of the water column. We were in 28 to 32 feet of water. Um, I wasn't on the fish nearly as long on Thursday, but they were a lot lower in the water column. Where Saturday, when you got on the active fish like early in the morning, you had a couple fish that were 12 feet off the bottom, 15 feet off the
Yeah,
bottom, and then we got out of that warmer pocket for a while, kind of lost that warmer pocket of water, and it just looked completely different where all the fish were sucked tight to the bottom until we found that area where they were active again and still again 12, 15 feet off the bottom.
sure. And it makes sense, to me. You have all those waves crashing into the structure we were on. We were in the 25 to 32 foot range, mostly 26 to 28 feet. Um,
Mhm.
but you still have a lot of current and you have a lot of waves pushing up onto that structure. And what that tells me when you see all those fish higher in the water column, you've got the waves to kind of cover your tracks a little bit. And when Thursday it was pretty flat calm, you just didn't have that, and that makes a lot of sense. You get those fish within 30 feet of the boat, and you can physically watch them on sonar stare at your boat.
Yeah. Yeah, it's this year more so than any other year, and might be because I've been on the bow of the boat more often. I've actually seen fish go past your jig or whatever you're throwing, a death jig, regular jig and crawler, and look up at the boat and then just kind of mosey away. So I mean, we're in October. Green Bay was pounded late July, August, part of September by a lot of anglers, a lot of fishermen. So these fish they're educated. I mean, they're smarter than we think they are. They kind of know what the trends are. So being able to fool them, obviously the waves helped a ton, and just kind of the boat position that we had throughout the day was key for us to get those bites.
Yeah, boat positioning might be one of the 2 or 3 biggest contributors to us doing well in tournaments.
Yeah,
And
which I can't say we did that great most of the day, but
sure.
when we got bit, it was obvious that it was boat positioning. So it was like, again, like you're saying, it's those micro adjustments and just trying to figure out what angles we need to attack these fish at. Because there were a couple times we had to turn on fish and go into the waves or just cross wave and just reposition on a few of those fish as we were learning throughout the day.
Yeah, there were several times where we made casts at a fish and we looked at each other. It's like, reel it in. Let's get the right angle before we make
Yep.
this next cast, because between the current sweeping your bait away, those fish should never even see your bait half the time.
Yeah.
And then you get downwind, it's almost like hunting a whitetail. You get downwind of that fish, you can point your bow right into the wind. You can present the bait the correct way, the correct distance, make them follow. Allow yourself to make adjustments if needed, and a lot of times they would commit after that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much so.
Awesome. Well, it was fun. Guys, we were
I'd
throwing
say
death. I was throwing a death jig. Mitch was throwing a crawler. I think we caught every single fish on a death jig or a jig and a crawler.
we did.
I know
Yeah,
I
I
had
got
a
bit
few
on a hair
fish.
jig.
Yep.
I got bit on a hair jig. I threw a lipless crankbait for a while. I didn't get any bites, and they did react to it a bit. You kind of changed a few things up. You had a lot of fish chasing that jigging wrap after,
Yeah.
right around 2 o'clock. You had a
Yep.
ton of fish very actively chasing that jigging wrap.
So what happened a lot of times later in the morning, later in the day, that water starts to warm up, their metabolism starts to go up a little bit. I like to throw that moving bait a little more, and they were pretty stagnant for a good portion of that afternoon. I don't think we caught a fish after 12:30 in the in the afternoon. It got to be around 2 o'clock, trying to force feed them to do something, and I really started ripping that bait a lot. And once one would key in on it, it would follow it like crazy. We had multiple fish follow at 50 to 60 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Um, didn't
Aggressively following.
aggressively, and I unfortunately, never just got any hookups. I had a couple swipe at it and never actually hit the bait. But it's something to keep in your mind. I've put a couple videos out where I use it as a follow-up bait, or I use a death jig as a follow-up bait. It's always good to have a second option right next to you all the time.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think too, like that 11:30 until 2 o'clock time frame, we were kind of pounding the same area that we were hitting, getting fish at in the morning. And I truly think that warmer water just pushed a couple of 100 yards to the south, because all of a sudden we get a little bit to the south. We tried a little bit further in that same depth range, and that's where those active fish were. They just looked the same as they looked in the morning, but for like 2.5 hours, it looked much different.
Yep.
Those fish were not active. They were tight to bottom. It didn't look like there were as many walleyes mixed in with junk fish. I shouldn't say junk fish, but any other fish. And once we got back in, it was extremely obvious that we found that water, and it was about a half a degree difference from where we were a little bit to the north 2 hours before that.
Yep. So guys, don't be afraid to, the game plan might be whatever it is, but don't be afraid to stray a little bit from the game plan, just to make sure the fish that you expect to be biting may have slid a half mile. And that's just how it works sometimes. It happens a lot in tournaments.
Yeah. Yeah, one key thing for us too. I mean, I had the inkling on Thursday to just get off of the structure, like just off structure, where you could be targeting some suspended fish chasing bait. And there's no doubt that those fish are going to go back on the structure at some point. But to stay in front of those fish all day long, we felt like it was best to stay just off the structure for those fish that are just slid off. And you're just going to continue to get fish cycle in and off that structure. So you're kind of in that sweet spot there. So don't be afraid to just slide off that structure a little bit, keep searching for fish. There were a couple guys that were trolling around us. There were a couple guys doing something similar on structure, and even a few guys that slid off structure. They just weren't getting the bites that we were getting.
Yeah, we were definitely lucky that we were a bit stubborn and forcing ourselves to really slow down, because I think the second place team ended up fishing near us at some point during the day.
Mm-hmm.
But we really stuck it out. We grounded our game plan, and we forced a few bites. Honestly, I think it's something that, if you're really confident in yourself and your game plan, like we were, you can make happen, and thankfully we did.
You go back to our first podcast. I think we recorded one. Was that February, March this year?
Yeah.
I said I love tough bites, and that was. I mean, this last weekend was a tough bite, realistically. And those are the ones that I feel like you just need to pay attention to detail, adjust to those fish, and you're gonna get bit. You just have to be patient enough to get bit.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, guys, thanks for watching. Thanks again from our sponsors, Walleye Nation Creations, Image 360, and Crown Trophy of Oshkosh, Wisconsin, Striker Brands, Lake Effect Lures, Bellevue Spice Company, and Thunderhook Fly-Ins. Mitch, if we're not, I think we're going to fish the National Walleye Tour next year. We might be. I'm going to be. I don't know if you're going to or not. We've had some talks about you joining me maybe, but if we don't, I think we need to run it back and win another one.
I agree with you, and I will fish the National Walleye Tour if I get some money. So if any of your listeners are interested in investing, feel free to reach out.
Yeah, reach out. Mitch and I would love a couple of marquee sponsors on our side here for next year. But Mitch, thank you again for watching, buddy. Duck Creek Walleye Series champions, everybody.
Appreciate you, brother. See ya.